Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Costain. An analysis of 3 million species records by the new nature recovery portal Life to Land has revealed that the non-native sycamore has become the UK's third most common tree. Chris de Gorn, the founder of Life to Land, says that this underscores the alarming extent of Britain's biodiversity loss. I asked him why this finding is important.
So in the UK, when we usually talk about rewilding, we talk about nature restoration, we usually start from the point of view of where are our ecosystems right now, and where did they used to be? And if we look at sort of the where our ecosystems are right now, they're heavily degraded. We've lost a huge proportion of the species which should be in them, and the species which are in them are not necessarily species which are native to these ecosystems. They're species which have been introduced maybe from mainland Europe or maybe from other countries. Rhododendron is also in the top 20 list, and that's a really serious concern to the UK government because we spent nearly 4 million on it between 2015 and 2022. So just on rhododendron control, like keeping these species under control to stop them from spreading across the habitat and basically like swamping the entire habitat is a real issue for landowners. Things like sycamore, technically you can get timber out of sycamore, but when the sycamore are present in a woodland, what they tend to do is as soon as there's a gap in the canopy, the sycamore are the first to appear, and they take over that section of the woodland much faster than any other tree. And because they got kind of big shade-inducing leaves, they'll kind of shade out the forest floor below, which means there's not as much biodiversity in those patches as there could be. And you tend to end up with a near monoculture of sycamore in some places. And if you look at some of the British woodlands where this is happening, I mean, literally the woods just up the hill from me is happening. There's sycamore everywhere. And there's a woodland which has been surveyed in Oxfordshire where it's, you know, over 50% of the trees are sycamore in one survey, sort of over a certain height.
Chris, you talk about the sycamore being non-native. How long does a tree have to exist in Britain before it can be considered native?
The point about the distinction between native and non-native trees is that the native species in the UK are the ones which have existed in the UK for thousands, tens of thousands of years. And they have evolved alongside the other organisms which are in these ecosystems. So they've evolved alongside the moths, alongside, you know, the worms, alongside the fungi, and they've created these kind of beneficial relationships. And I talk about it in terms of like, you know, you've got a friend who you've just met, you might have kind of one or two things you have in common, but if you could know someone for years and years and years, you've got lots of in-jokes, you've got lots of kind of like things which you have in common, and these kind of connections build up over time. And it's the same with trees and organisms within an ecosystem. You just get lots and lots of sort of this, you know, this web of interactions which forms over a really long period of time. And when you get a new tree species, a new invasive species, a new kind of non-native species which comes into that ecosystem, the problem with it is that it doesn't have those inbuilt relationships. So it doesn't provide the food resources, and it doesn't create the kind of boost in abundance of the other organisms which are found around that habitat. But the other problem is that you also get this effect of like, because those other organisms can't eat it, maybe like with rhododendron, you get the invasive species comes in and takes over because nothing can eat it, and you know it can take over the habitat much faster than the other plants around it.
Now, you've used the National Biodiversity Network to investigate the species records and come to that conclusion. What is that, and is it something that's available to everyone?
Yeah, the National Biodiversity Network is a fantastic resource, and there's an atlas component of it as well. It basically compiles huge amounts of open source and other data sets, including things like iNaturalist, which is, you know, iNaturalist is an app which you can use to go out and record things yourself, and it's something which I use with my son. We love going out and recording, you know, insects and trees and things like that. And it also includes things like county records of birds and just specific species surveys of things like maybe churchyard yews or things like that, which go back to, you know, 1870s or whatever. It's this massive database of all these species records, which is sort of pulled together in one place. And it's a really useful place where you can do research into like what species are in this area, what species have historically been in this area. And you can sort of draw you can draw circles on maps and say what has been here or what's been here between these periods of time.
Now, this week sees the launch of your new project, Life to Land, which is a landowner portal that aims to provide clear and detailed nature recovery advice. What sort of information does your portal provide?
Life to Land is trying to the project's the point of it is to democratize access to ecology information. And when you're a landowner, you might look at your land and kind of wonder what on earth is really going on in terms of the biodiversity there and how you can restore nature on it. The point of Life to Land is to connect you to the information which will make it easier to understand what's going on, what the processes are. And once you understand those kind of core processes, then it's much easier to work out what cost-effective interventions you can make in order to improve the biodiversity. So there are suggestions for things which you might do to improve the biodiversity, but it's also this process of learning where, like, the more you understand the ecology, the more you understand what's going on, the easier it is for you to go, oh, well, because I understand this, I can now make this kind of logical leap and go, well, this will probably work. I've got this machine lying around. And because trammeling around in the soil creates diversity because of soil disturbance, then maybe I can use this machine which I have, which can create soil disturbance, and that might create biodiversity as well. It's this, once you have this kind of baseline understanding of ecology, it gives you the tools, the mental tools to be able to make sort of logical leaps and help yourself more cost effectively.
Presumably you're drawing on information from sources like the National Biodiversity Network, but to use that network search tool, you really need to know what it is that you're looking for before you start. So what level of knowledge do you need in order to get information and value out of your Life to Land portal?
The point about the Life to Land portal is it's built for users with content from easy levels to medium to intermediate to hard. So there is a real sort of gradient. So there's a 45-minute lecture which people can view right at the beginning, which is basically like a real grounding for complete beginners to ecology, which runs you through the 3Ds, which is my kind of way of looking at ecological systems and kind of understanding how they work. But there's lots of other guides in there as well. So it depends on how you sort of want to access information, because a lot of different people access information in different ways. They want to read it, they want to listen, they want to watch videos. So I try to provide for each level of understanding. The NBN data, you can access it on a map. You can access that via search tools. It is a bit difficult to access some of the time. And there are easier search tools like on iNaturalist. You can also do similar things where you can search for species within a radius, and being on an app, that's usually more accessible for people.
And what else does the portal provide? What sort of services are there? Because looking at it from my own perspective, it looks like it's drawing together a range of data and information and presenting it in a really sort of user-friendly fashion.
Yeah, one of the things which is present there is there's a tree list, a butterfly list, and a bird list. And the tree list can be useful just in terms of identifying trees which might be useful to plant on your land. But the other thing as well is you can tick trees which are present, you can tick butterflies and birds which are present. And that gives you an idea of what the species diversity is like at a set point in time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow people to sort of cache that information for a specific year for 2024 and then monitor how it changes over time. So it will give you a kind of rough idea of how the biodiversity is improving or changing over time in response to the interventions which you're doing. So it's not just a system for learning about how biodiversity works. It's also a system for learning about how the biodiversity on your specific plot of land is changing and why it might be evolving.
And just finally, how do you expect the portal and the services it delivers to develop over time?
They're evolving from day to day, from week to week. I've just added a new magazine content section because I realized that people are interested in, reading interesting content, not just accessing the portal for information and guides. So every day, every week, I'm adding new bits and changing things and trying to make it more user friendly.
That was Chris de Gorn from Life to Land. More news on our website, 8.9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.